This video, I'm going to talk to you about a HSBC trader who generated $17 million of profit for this particular company, of course HSBC, but then he got fired, right? It's going to give you key lessons of how to protect yourself in your corporate career so you don't let this happen to you. Now, just a legal disclaimer, this is all alleged and speculation, of course, and general career advice, reading in between the lines of this news story. And if you just want a bit more context on myself, I've worked in the finance industry for over a decade, including HSBC. So, I have some experience here that would be relevant. So we just start with the title, which is the ex-HSBC trader who said he was fired. He thinks he was mainly fired due to raising concerns about racism against him or other type of mistreatment. And then he looking for some kind of compensation during this particular instance. Now, we're going to go through this in more detail here. So my assessment, and we're going to go through the article and see what lessons we can learn to benefit your career. But the way I see it essentially is the employee raises issues, then the company retaliates by reviewing all the work he's done to find any small reason to fire him, any small errors, and then manufacture a narrative to be against you. And this is how companies control you, right? By manufacturing good narratives to promote you or bad narratives to get rid of you, right? He says he's suffered years of this type of mistreatment. And essentially, like I say, they use this to find minor issues with his performance to get rid of him. Here we want to start with the article. It says, an ex-HSBC trader who says he was unfairly sacked told the employment tribunal, the employment litigation process, that he'd suffered nightmares and extreme stress and trauma after dealing with years of racism and other type of mistreatment working at the company, right? Then the way I'd see it is, I don't know, we're all speculating here. I doubt he's a grown adult man. I doubt he's dealing with nightmares through verbal abuse of some of his co-workers. Maybe it still does bother him or he thinks about it daily. I doubt it's actually dealing with nightmares, but it really does show you how it can impact your sense of self-worth and sense of identity if you're constantly dealing with like negative feedback from co-workers, unfairly, them gaslighting you, making comments about your race, or pretending that your work isn't good when it actually is good, things like that. So this is the guy, right? Former derivatives trader who was fired from HSBC, had been working there for 9 years, right? So 9 years isn't a short time period. It's not like he's a new, inexperienced employee trying to make a quick cash grab for making some money through playing the victim, playing the race card. He knows, firstly, that if he's going to pursue this lawsuit, that it could backfire. Many cases, many employees have lawsuits and they don't make money from it. And also he knows his name's going to be publicly available, right? So he's taking a big risk that, other companies won't want to hire him because even though he might have made a lot of money spending 9 years as a derivatives trader at HSBC in their trading floor, he knows that other employees other companies might Google his name and find this lawsuit and might be reluctant to hire him. So he's taking a big risk by doing this. So I assume he's got solid grounds on what he's standing on in terms of this particular situation, right? He's not a new, inexperienced employee. And then it says in February 2022, he brought this issue to an employment lawsuit against the bank for unfair dismissal, whistleblowing detriments, disability discrimination, and breach of contract, right? And I think he has some solid grounds based on how we read this, which we're going to go through, right? And then he's saying that I think on some of these cases it might apply, right? Whistleblowing detriments could be he's raising issues about racism and comments are made against him. And then the company retaliated by finding any issue with his performance to get rid of him, right? And this is the company breaching the contract. Now, he said the bank dismissed him for raising concerns about so-called front running. And if you're not familiar with front running, it's a bit of a gray area, right? But it's essentially when a market maker or a broker is essentially trading ahead of the client. So if the client reaches out to the bank and says, okay, I want to buy 500 Tesla shares, and the bank knows that when they buy that amount or maybe a much larger amount, it's going to increase the price. So what the bank does is it buys ahead of the client so they benefit from the price increasing in that particular stock. There's a bit more to it than that, but it's essentially trading ahead of clients on the basis that they're going to invest in a particular stock, right? And it could be relevant to other assets, right? If you want to think about it in an easier way, it could be people knowing that a meme coin is going to be launched, and then people are going to be investing in a meme coin, and then a particular large financial investor gets ahead of that because they have that information. They invest in that like a stock, like a crypto exchange. They invest in a meme coin, and then they know clients are going to be buying it, so they benefit from that price going up. is a bit more complex than that. And because banks and major brokers, they have so much information about which clients are going to trade when, there's lots of opportunities to exploit that. And sometimes they can justify that in the sense that they're buying particular stocks and shares to sell back to their clients. So they're effectively building an inventory to sell to their clients. But lots of gray areas are there for banks to take advantage of that. So it's highly suspect the way they operate, right? And of course, a lot of the ways banks make money are not legitimate. So it's kind of ridiculous that they're holding him personally accountable for this one instance where you can essentially say the trade the right thing or the wrong thing. And I've seen many of these cases myself, right? It's really about manufacturing a narrative. Oh, he was buying those particular shares ahead of the client to have an inventory to sell to the client. Oh no, he was buying those shares in those instances because you want to take advantage of clients buying that particular stock or share, right? So it really is a grey area. So the fact that they've found this to nail on to the cross on and firing from the company, I find it highly suspect. So this is the thing. It's quite a common way that banks take advantage, but they're never held accountable for. So I don't think they're right in holding him accountable. So what does HSBC say about firing him? Effectively, they're manhunt, in my opinion. After he started raising issues about maybe how the company operates and maybe mistreatment against him, they start to find any reason to identify where he's done something wrong, even if it's a small thing, right? It's that where they have enhanced surveillance, they start monitoring everything you're doing for any little breach of company policy, right? They effectively have a manhunt to find any error to fire you. In his case, they say HSBC said it fired Adam, this employee, for gross misconduct after discovering recorded calls on his work phone calls where he discussed obtaining Class A substances, which would be drugs and things like that, for a music festival. And they basically used that as a reason, one of the many reasons to kind of get rid of him, right? Now, one thing I would say is that he's joking in this call with his friend, essentially, right? So what happens is, and when you're in the trading floor, you're dealing with high stress environments, people are going to be joking, right, to deal with the stress. Yeah, like in the office, in a sense, people are sending messages to each other, doing $1 million trades. There's under a lot of stress and risk management. It's not as fancy as it might sound if you watch a TV show or movie about it. And people will be joking with each other. You have to build a rapport with your fellow brokers, other people in the market, the clients that you're interacting with. Might be joking around about things, but you're not genuinely being serious, right? So lots of these things tend to get overlooked when it's convenient, but then portraying people as bad when it's convenient for the company too. They want to portray you in a negative light. For example, I remember viewing or reviewing many people's personal chats at work, Bloomberg chats, Bloomberg terminal chats, all types of emails and things, because I would do some of the trading surveillance at certain times in my career. And people will make jokes or serious comments about hiring escorts, about buying illegal substances, hustling clients, jokes about essentially making governments bankrupt through some of these major banks would be doing very dodgy, questionable deals with different banks, essentially banks or governments, very risky financial investments, or using burner phones, like, secondary phones that aren't maybe tracked by government entities, or to do things that might be suspect, or discussing things on WhatsApp when legally, in the US, in the UK, every financial discussion in relation to a company has to be on the company's, emails and things. And many people would break all of these laws, but all these rules. But if they're a favor of the company management, they'll basically sweep it under the rug and say it's not a real thing or it didn't really happen. And it's so funny because I remember identifying someone discussing very large transactions, like $100 million transactions on WhatsApp calls with the client. And then, technically they should have been disciplined for that, have some disciplinary action, but because their senior management like them, they kind of overlook it. So there's so many gray areas. So they found this one joke he made with his friend or another bank, essentially, or just a co-worker, about buying drugs for a music festival. And I doubt it was serious, to be honest. And even if it was serious, is someone doing something in their personal life, maybe you can give them a quick warning and say, don't discuss that on company devices where all the calls are recorded. It reflects poorly on the company. But these aren't grounds to effectively fire someone. Now, if you're dealing with situations like this where the company's trying to set you up, which we're going to continue to go through, I do have career coaching to help you with this, right? To help you map your strategy to career freedom, being a man in the workplace when you're being targeted for a layoff, if you're dealing with a promotion, how to navigate that effectively, outsmarting this type of office politics and you're being set up, and accelerating your goals for financial freedom. Link in description if you want to speak with me directly. So let's continue with this story, right? So HSBC said they fired him because of that kind of phone call, amongst a few other things. And the bank considered this a breach of their contract, like the job contract, because he was saying inappropriate things on these calls. Now, I don't really buy all of this. Now, from his perspective as a witness, the employee who was fired, he said it was the environment, HSBC's trading floor was non-inclusive. It was some other words I'm not going to say right now. And essentially, he said he frequently experienced verbal mistreatment and due to his race, right? Partly due to his race and other aspects of his personal life, right? He said he was dealing with increased and unsustainable workloads, combined with extreme pain from a back condition, severely in physical and mental health during his final months at HSBC. Now, if they want to set you up to fail, there's many ways of doing it, but one way of doing it is giving you tons of extra work and saying you're not doing the work, you're not capable of doing the job, and then they'll just drive you out the company, right? So that's typically how they do, deliberately giving you extra work for no extra pay to drive you out, right? Giving you a bad performance review, and if you make one small mistake, they'll make it a big deal out of it, but if other employees make those mistakes, then they'll overlook it. I remember when I could kind of foresee that happening at one point in my career where I got a kind of questionable performance review and they kept my bonus flat. And I was thinking, hold on, what's going on here? Why would they mention such small things like I have long emails, or I put too many bullet points on an email, or I attach the attachment on an email to the body of an email in a nice table to organize things effectively, but they said that was just confusing. Putting those little minor things on a written annual performance review is highly questionable to me. It's like you're setting me up for failure, or really finding nitpicking any small issue when people are making big blunders and big mistakes on our team, like failing to go a training presentation to train 500 traders and then accidentally, because they had misprint and they actually trained them on maybe the first quarters and they missed the last quarter of the training because the printer didn't print it, but they didn't look ahead of time of what they're going through. So this is a type of ridiculous situations that you have to deal with. People missing 10 slides on a training for 500 traders in a very important sales and trading annual training. That gets completely ignored and not listed on someone's performance review. But me putting too many bullet points in an email is an issue for them, right? So this is the type of things they try to set you up, right? Giving you too much work, nitpicking any small issue. So these are the things to look out for. Document everything, keep written records when you think they're trying to set you up of key conversations, performance reviews, any promises they give you of promotions or bonuses. If things go south, a paper trail is your best defense. Monitor your standing internally, right? So if you sense management's turning against you, the vibe is shifting, and really a lot of the things are about sensing the vibes. If there's a vibe shift, people all of a sudden don't like you, you've got to think why that is. Take preemptive action to protect yourself, securing an internal move, maybe moving to another team in the department or another department, or lining up external job offers before things tend to escalate. And also have justifications when things go wrong. It's not your fault. It's the policy, it's the procedure, it's the overall process. You can help improve it, but it's not your fault. Never take responsibility for issues on email. And they'll try to set you up. They'll find one thing that was gone wrong and they said, oh, there's been a delay for several weeks because you didn't do this. And if you take responsibility on that email, they will use that responsibility to justify putting you on a performance improvement plan to drive you out the company, saying, well, you acknowledge you didn't do this properly, so we need to put you on a performance improvement plan, which will probably end up in dismissal or just fire you from the company, right? So that's why you have to have justification. Never take personal accountability. No one in the office takes personal accountability for anything, and you'll notice that when you really pay attention. So don't overcommit without clear compensation. So if your workload suddenly increases, but your pay doesn't, you should be questioning that, even in a nice way, if you think they're setting you up to fail effectively. And push back strategically, ensure any expectations of you, additional work, is explained in writing, so you've got a full track record that they're giving you too much work. So now he said that he was promised a promotion to director, and he added that he was discriminated on the grounds of his disability, right? There's some truth to this and some exaggeration, right? And this is what happens. If you're in an employment lawsuit situation, you have to leverage everything to benefit you. Oh, they impacted your mental health. Maybe that can't be measured because, you can't really measure someone's mental health or physical health. It impacted your back, but back pain might be kind of common. How do you justify that? And race-related comments, sometimes there's no track record of that. People are saying it verbally, so you might be exaggerating slightly, but it kind of makes sense to a large extent. When you're in employment tribunals, employment lawsuits, you're going to exaggerate a bit. Now, next time it comes on to a spokesperson for HSBC. So interesting, HSBC kind of wanted to respond to this publicly, right? They say, we vigorously defend the claim and refute the allegations of unfair dismissal. The allegations are not reflective of the bank's culture. We operate in a highly regulated sector. The finance sector has a lot of financial regulation, and we require all our employees to act with integrity. Now, one of the funniest things is a financial institution talking about acting with integrity. There's no banks, there's no companies that really act with integrity, and we know this. If you watch my channel, you probably know this. What's quite funny to me is when I was working in one particular bank, this was after many banking scandals have come out. So one of the major professional training bodies in the UK, financial kind of training bodies like CISI, you probably heard of that. They introduced this new professional qualification called acting with integrity. And to work at the bank, in your first few months, you have to complete this professional thing where they give you different case studies about how to deal with integrity and how to act with integrity, and like maybe report things to HR or management if you see some improper trading, things like that. And it's all these airy-fairy case studies you have to do, completely ridiculous, right? But it's just what happens. They don't have real integrity. They just create processes and procedures around integrity. And there was a big deal. I'm sure it's the same in the US, where they literally come up with just bogus terms, integrity tests and qualifications. Another term they came up with is conduct risk, when people's conduct isn't right. So we have to have a whole team and department to introduce the best conduct for the team. How do we measure people's conduct is not too risky? It's completely bogus terms, right? If you look up the term conduct risk, you'll see they have a whole waste of space, regulation around this, right? Now we're going to move on to the next point here, right? So he's talking about Adam and his witness statement, right? But first thing, I just want to expand upon that conduct thing, right? Many banks, they're known for rigging financial markets. They're known for corruption, screwing over their clients, joking about that in chats that go public and some news stories. Lying, benefiting from the money printing from central banks, pushing the DEI or ESG climate agenda that is they're trying to restrict people's ability to eat meat, drink milk, drive cars. A lot of these agendas about the climate agenda, carbon credits, it's a whole scam pushed by banks, so they can't really play the moral high ground. So next he's talking about his witness statement. Adam says in his witness statement that in August 2021, he had a phone call with his friend. It's not a literal drug dealer. He did not buy any illegal substances from the person. It was in a joking way, and it was approached to investigate it, but it wasn't right to kind of dismiss them or use it as one of the reasons to dismiss him. And this is the thing about work, right? You can't joke at work, and you'll see these double standards where someone will make a joke and it'll be fine, but if you make certain jokes, it'll be highly judged, right? It depends on whether they want to get rid of you or not. And it's important to have excuses, like I say, or track record of other mistakes or treatment that other employees make. And if they're not mistreated for saying appropriate things, or they're not dealing with company dismissals, or kind of any type of disciplinary action for making jokes, and they're similar jokes to what you would say, then why are you being judged for it? I remember an instance where this really left-wing, liberal, weird guy who was my manager at the time, who was super anti-Trump, he would always go on at how he didn't like Trump. And he made jokes about grabbing women, as Trump made a joke about locker room talk about grabbing women. So when Trump did it, it was a terrible thing, but when he makes a joke about it, it's perfectly acceptable, right? These are the type of weird double standards you have to listen to when it's like, okay, cool, well, why can they say that, but I can't make a joke? If a man makes a joke about a woman's weight, that's not acceptable, but a woman can make a joke about a man's weight or height, those are socially acceptable. Those are the type of double standards you'll see. So it's important as best as you can to avoid workplace gossips, jokes, controversial topics. Even casual jokes can be weaponized against you later. And if you're on a trading floor or there's a high risk industry that you're in, it's best to keep conversations strictly related to work, separating your work and your personal life. Of course, your co-workers, managers, and HR aren't your friends. Anything you share with them could be used against you later to set you up. So let's continue with his story, right? It says, instead, this former trader said the main reason for the investigation and his dismissal was speaking up to management over their policy of trading US treasuries, right? So this is kind of an interesting thing to point out here. When you do raise issues about how the company operates, like I say, they're going to leverage it against you. Now, as you can see here, HSBC had to pay over $100 million for settling a currency probe, which is essentially manipulating FX, foreign exchange prices. All of us at some point have exchanged currencies through maybe going on vacations, and the price you get for that currency might have been manipulated by HSBC. For example, you're changing dollars into euros, and maybe they're doing some market manipulation, and then that pushes the price of those particular euros up or down depending on the manipulation they're doing. So this is the right. Many of these banks are doing these type of things quite actively, and you point this out, and this will be used as leverage to kick you out of company. HSBC had a long-standing reputation and many rumors about engaged in currency manipulation. In this case, is manipulating trading US treasuries, US bonds. So these are the type of things where it's like the bank policy is deliberately vague to allow for a level of manipulation without saying it. It's like implied. You have to read in between the lines of what they're doing. And that's why he does say in 2020, he raised concerns that the bank's policy was too vague and could have led to front running according to his statements. So this is the thing. It's hard to read between the lines, but I don't think he necessarily was trying to set the company up to fail or really make them look bad. But, raising small issues, they're like, oh, you're speaking up too much. You're pointing out the things. You're saying things out loud that we don't want being said. You're saying the quiet part out loud. The type of thing of pointing out the elephant in the room, and they don't like it, so they wanted to get rid of him. That's the way I read this situation, right? Adam said HSBC's US Treasuries team, comprising of himself and 6 other traders, considered it reasonable to trade up to half an order in the market before the client had agreed to carry out the deal. But doing this would likely move prices against the client's interest. So he's just pointing out that, this aspect of trading ahead of the client could disadvantage the client, but the bank saw it as, okay, cool, he's trying to point out our corrupt activity, allegedly, and now, of course, they need to gun for his career and get rid of him. It's typical for banks to kind of manipulate the markets and then play dumb when it's convenient for them. So he said the traders tried to justify the practice by suggesting they were testing liquidity and to protect the bank against consequences of mispricing a quote. Now, one thing I want you to know, if you're working in the finance industry, you ever hear any of these so-called fake finance gurus talking about how the banking industry works, a common excuse they use for any type of manipulation is liquidity. We need to help liquidity in the market. That's why front running is occurring, or we're testing liquidity. A lot of these things are just justifications for manipulative trading, front running clients, trading ahead of clients. And it's the biggest lie in many investment banks, sales and trading. They justify everything by it. Now, Adam continues, right? He was working with a colleague and he generated 30 million in annual profit for HSBC in 2020. And when it comes to trading US treasuries alone, he generated 17 million. So these are large amounts, right? And these are not small time type of trades. He's been working there for 9 years, almost a decade. He knows what he's talking about here, right? So the thing is, you need to know when you're being targeted just before we move on, and when it's best to kind of exit on your own terms, right? Of course, he's pursuing the employee litigation scenario, which typically doesn't work out. He might get an out-of-court settlement, but it's very expensive for him, and maybe with all the high salary he's been on as a trader who's been a decade, he can probably afford that. In many cases, you might not be able to afford it. You might not be able to play the victim card and the race card, and you might just want to exit on your own terms before they might try to set you up to fail or really dig into your trading and try to portray you as a manipulative trader or something like that. You're doing some inappropriate trading and really try to ruin your life, right? So the best defense sometimes at corporate politics sometimes is leaving at the right time rather than just staying there and having a backup plan. I'm sure he has sufficient investments and other income sources, probably property, to keep him going during this tricky time. And then what I mean about them targeting him. HSBC started investigating him and they put him under enhanced surveillance, which led to the bank discovering this phone call that we just discussed here. Now, if you're ever under enhanced surveillance, obviously they won't tell you. It just means the bank, because they perceive you as doing something inappropriate, they want to track all your communication, right? And they do it, without letting you know. You'll have compliance teams, surveillance teams. effectively they're going through all your emails, all your calls for any type of error that they can flag, right? Sometimes you can say they have a legitimate reason that you might be doing something inappropriate, or that you've just been flagged for doing something inappropriate. They want to check everything else. So this is the thing, right? And this is how they can really deliberately target you if they want to get rid of you too. I would say if you're working in corporate roles, just assume you're always being watched. If the company wants to fire you, they'll find an excuse to do it. Keep all your communication professional. Avoid discussing sensitive topics on work devices. So HSBC, and after this, they said that he failed to engage with them. He obstructed the investigation into his conduct. And they just go on and try to find reasons to get rid of him, right? They said that he wasn't a whistleblower. He wasn't protected by whistleblower protected disclosures. He was just flagging an issue. And this is the thing. There are tons of structures that really fire you and say that you're not protected, but they're protected, right? He wasn't a whistleblower by flagging these inappropriate trading activities, but the company can protect itself and come up with any to defend itself and nitpick little issues to fire you, right? So if you're going to raise concerns, do it strategically. Whistleblowing can get you targeted for the company. They can retaliate if you escalate issues. So bear that in mind. They could put you up and fire you. They could essentially set you up to fail, right? And lots of protected disclosures. If you're going to whistleblow or point out issues about the company, make sure you do it in the right legal way and things like that. Read in between the lines of dismissal cases like this. I think firms always have legal loopholes, like I say, to justify firing you and protect themselves. Learn from their tactics. Maybe be one step ahead, whether it's looking for a job externally, playing the victim card early when you have some leverage. So it might give you time to maybe get some time off work for mental health sickness or things like that. So the bottom line here is just to stay sharp, document everything. Don't get too comfortable in your corporate environments where backstabbing is common. So this is a very real scenario, very real life. People are dealing with these type of things. And if you're considering how to navigate the corporate environment, I have a coaching program called Company Man Success Secrets, where you can achieve complete career control, map your strategy from your to greater financial freedom, outsmarting office politics, being a man at work and dealing with these type of weird environments. And whether you're dealing with a layoff or promotion, I'll help you navigate through that too. So link in description if you want to speak with me directly. What do you think about how this employee was set up? Do you think he was set up, or do you think maybe he's making it all up? I think he has some validity to his points. 2 recommended videos on the screen right now, and I'll see you next time.